Welcome, everybody, to another Think with a Drink, the weekly webinar series brought to you by the ARIES Foundation for Financial Education. And this one is kind of a fun one for Craig and I. We're having a little play on words here. Since April is Financial Literacy Month, and this is March. At the end of April, we are marching into financial wellness. That is tonight's topic for everybody. We're going to go over a little bit about financial wellness, what it means, what the heck it is, how do I get it, and what are some of the things I can do to sort of be better well-being financially, right? So before we get into that, let's do just a quick little housekeeping. Just know we are recording the event. We do share these events on our website. We share them on our YouTube channel. Just keep the microphones muted. You don't have to worry about the cameras. There is, however, a chat box. So do us a favor, just if you have questions, put them in the chat box, and my co-pilot, who I will introduce in a second, is here to sort of answer anything, keep us on pace, chime in as we go along, and just basically have a grand old time. All right, so your pilots for today's journey. My name is Tom Alessi. I am the president of the ARIES Foundation. I have been in financial services for now 24 years. I am an investment advisor. That means I act as a fiduciary whenever I'm giving guidance or advice to any of my clients. I want to bring my vice president, Craig, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Craig Richardson. I'm the vice president of the ARIES Foundation. I've been in financial services for over 19 years now, and I specialize in working with families and individuals to help them define their financial goals and have a better relationship with their money.
And as I said, Craig will be chiming in as we go along through this evening. I told you that Think with a Drink is brought to you by the ARIES Foundation for Financial Education. You can visit us on the web at ariesfoundation.org. The mission behind the ARIES Foundation is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money, because whether you realize it or not, you are in a relationship with your money. And just like every other personal relationship you have, there are behaviors and triggers that cause us to act sometimes a little irrationally when dealing with our finances. All Craig, myself, the rest of the ARIES team, all we try to do is help everybody get a little better handle on how they're dealing and handling their money, which happens to be sort of right at the heart of tonight's presentation and everything that we're going to be going through. Before we get to that, we do have disclosures. There's a lot of words on the screen. I'm not going to read them. You can do that at your own leisure. Just know that we're a nonprofit. We do this for educational and informational reasons only. All we ask is that if you're ever going to share any of this information, because we do put it on our YouTube channel, we do put it on the website, that you do so in an educational manner. However, Craig, myself, the rest of the team at ARIES will always recommend that if you ever have a question of a tax, legal, or financial nature, that you seek out the help of a professional to get those questions answered. Okay, now we come to the fun part of the evening. We call this Think with a Drink. And the reason we do that is because a lot of times this financial topics, money, wealth, all of this stuff tends to feel a little, I don't know, intimidating, Craig, might be the word, a little bit daunting for some people, challenging. I think that's a good word.
It's not the most fun thing people do, that's for sure.
Yes. And so what our goal at this is trying to make it more casual, more relaxed, very much informal. And we couldn't think of a better way to do that than if we weren't having something cold to sip on as we go through this. And so for tonight, I am drinking, and I know this one's going to be a little weird because it's Autumn Winds. This is a fest beer, otherwise known as an Oktoberfest, from our friends at Gray Sail Brewing down in Rhode Island. But, I thought, well, I didn't really have a beer that you could march to, right? So this is March into financial wellness. And I figured we could set sail for financial wellness. So that was sort of the idea with that. I was trying to make a connection there.
Yeah,
Um,
in the spring and you're already in the fall. I
I
mean,
know that was the other thing I was thinking of. Is like I already just flipped right past summer. No, and for those who know and have seen some of the ones we've done, our love for Oktoberfest and everything to do with Oktoberfest and Oktoberfest beers. For food pairings, it's something that we like to do here with the show. Talk a little bit about the beer and about pairing it with food. So in Oktoberfest, certainly think, anything of those German descent. Those think of the schnitzels and the bratwurst and those type of things. Certainly pretzels, right? Pretzels are a mainstay there with that. And because I know Craig always has an affinity for wondering if there's anything dessert wise that you might serve with an Oktoberfest, apple strudel, of course, the apple strudel, of course, with the Germans as far as that's concerned. What are you drinking tonight?
so this isn't a beer, but my wife and I went and did this cheese and wine tasting last weekend at this place called Falcino Vineyard in New Hampshire, Holland, New Hampshire. Very nice Italian style wines. The whole place looks like an Italian villa. And I'm having one of their their signature blends, which is called 10, which is they take 10 of their wines and actually combine them into one.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's what I'm drinking.
Red or white?
This one's a red. Yep.
It's a red. Nice.
Yeah.
Gold.
And it pairs with everything.
Well, it depends on the red, right? So a blend, certainly, yes, but more than likely it has one style of grape that it's more aligned with. So you just want to be careful with that because depending on that grape variety, the varietal that's in there or the most prevalent of it is going to dictate, the flavoring and where you're going to go with the pairing on that.
Well, I know in a few weeks you're going to come back with expert opinions from your march through Italy. So
yes, my tour of Tuscany, as they say. Yeah. We'll have all sorts of fun with that. All right, let's get underway here. So we're going to start with the agenda for tonight, which is, the whole what is financial wellness, because this is a buzzword that gets out there. The ways of dealing with money or some of those things to be thinking about as you have of your overall financial wealth, your financial well-being. One of the things Craig and I love to do is talk about money personalities. And we'll go through each of them. There are 7 defined money personalities. We'll talk a little bit about each and how the relationship with money sort of dictates based off the personality or the one trait, right? Just like your wine, Craig. So there you go. See, that's why Craig did it. See, that's why he had the variety there. He was like, wait, this fits perfectly with the montage because it's just like Craig's wine where, yes, there's a whole bunch of different grapes in there, but one variety is probably more prevalent, is probably the driver of that wine than anything else. Same with our personalities.
Yep.
See, you were just right on top of everything. I knew that. All right. So financial wellness, it's interesting because it has become, certainly since the pandemic anyway. I mean, before the pandemic, it was being batted around, but since the pandemic, I mean, financial wellness has become the buzzword, right? This is like everybody wants a piece of financial wellness or a way of engaging someone in financial wellness.
Well, I think, a lot of Americans, a lot of the world hit an emergency that they weren't expecting. And all of a sudden, everything that they were doing right or wrong with their finances came into perspective.
Yes,
yes. People actually want to know more about what's going on with my finances than they probably ever have before.
Right. And one of the, I don't want to call it a problem, but one of the things with saying financial wellness or trying to define it is the fact that what I define as financial wellness for me may not necessarily fit for you, and vice versa. What you are considering financial wellness or your overall well-being or what fits for you may not fit for me. So it's a very, very individualistic approach when you're looking at money and finances, when we're talking about somebody's overall financial well-being.
Right. To me, I just, a lot of people will talk about financial wellness being, are you wealthy? but that's not really the litmus test. For me, I look at it as, am I independent of financial stress? Or am I
Right.
consistently worried about money all the time?
And that's what we're going to talk about. That's the driver that we're going to go through here. The first part of this, like I said, is as Craig just mentioned, those hot buttons, the things that might either connect or everybody sort of feels when we're talking about money. The second part, again, is going through the personalities. So that first one, what the heck is financial wellness anyway? I should probably put that one up first, but that's okay. All right. So the first one is, can you cover an emergency? Right? Because I think this specifically, like Craig mentioned, coming out of the pandemic, this was the biggest thing. This is the thing. And everybody we talk to, every presentation we do, we are always going to drive back here because the statistic is something that the average person out there has like less than $1,000 in the bank or something.
Yeah, I think it's less than $400 for most people available for an emergency should something come up.
If something comes up. And so, our industry, when I say that, I mean financial planning has historically talked about having 3 to 6 months of living expenses, basic living expenses put away. But if we're talking about that the average person does not have $400 in the bank, that's 3 to 6 months is like this huge like climb every mountain type of thing. Like I'm tilting at windmills, to do that. So
I'm a lottery ticket too, right?
yeah, and so what Craig and I usually do is say let's start with something more realistic. Maybe it's like having a couple of weeks of expenses, maybe like a month or month and a half of expenses, or something as basic as whatever your deductible might be on your car or your home. Right. So if I've got, automobile insurance, I usually have a deductible, say 250 or 500, depending. Same thing with if I'm a homeowner or a renter, I've got deductible. Do I at least have enough in the bank to cover the deductible? Because if I don't, and I get in an accident, I got to pay for that somehow.
Right. Right.
And what happens is we're going to talk about debt in a little bit, but what happens is I turn to plastic and next thing you know, I've got debt just because of this accident that may or may not have been my fault, but I have to pay the deductible.
Right. And some people are just so busy trying to keep their head above water with their bills that they don't think about paying themselves. They don't think about putting money into savings. So, it's whatever's left over, if anything is left over, that's maybe what's in the checking account. Right.
Correct. Right. And so there's the first thing. Can I cover an emergency? So that's sort of how we sort of look at, financial well-being. That would be the first thing. The second is, are your spending habits in line with your values? Right. And some of this, yes, we can get into the whole, we've talked about, green investing and socially responsible and ESG, which is environmental, socially, and governance. But it's more about where are you trying to get to? What are you trying to achieve? And are you spending in a way that's moving you in that direction? Like Craig just said, are there spending that's building for you, that's doing the things you want it to do?
Well, I know you're going to get the money personalities pretty soon, but sometimes, we find that our values are not aligned with our spending habits or our
Yes, right.
Right. I mean, in one particular case is, let's say you have a family and small children and you say, well, I want to make sure that no matter what happens, they're all set. Well, people may not have life insurance in place. Well, that means your spending isn't in line with your value set. So, it's really important to understand what's important to you. And then, like I said, start trying to align those things with where you spend your money.
Right, because what happens in some cases with this is that if I'm aligning my values to my spending, like some of the negative feelings or let's call it guilt, right, that could come from spending, maybe because I'm spending it on things that okay, I like to spend them on, but they don't really align with what I'm trying to achieve. And then I have this whole, love-hate relationship with what I just spent.
Right, like craft beer is aligned with my values.
Well, you're drinking wine, so then we were sort of outside it.
Too, right?
Yes. So, this one is one of those questions that you would sort of ask and to say, how in control or how confident do you feel about money? And, most people, I think the answer often, Craig, that we get, especially with some of those organizations and other people that we work with is, I'm not good with money, or I don't like to deal with money type of thing. And that's usually somebody who's sort of pushing it off, like sort of like I don't want to deal with this type of thing.
Well, yeah, I think we've had this conversation many times about the fact that even talking about money for a lot of people is taboo. We don't talk about it, right? I mean, we go out and we practice everything, sports, all kinds of stuff. We don't sit there and practice managing money.
Right. No, and that's true, because that is sort of the conversation, right? That it's got to be this habit, this I'm going to do this thing, whatever it is. I'm trying to save for something. I've got to do this. Or maybe I've got debt. I want to reduce my debt. I've got to make steps and measures to do that. And the only way you can do it is, like Craig said, is to practice it and keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nothing ever starts, nothing, well, I forget the quote, but it's something about, like it's great things never happen until they start, right? So you until you start, nothing is ever going to happen.
That's right. You got to get into the financial budgeting batting cage, right?
You got to get in there and you got to do it, and that's sort of stays to the next one, right? So having confidence and being confident about where you are and how you handle money is one part of it. The other is that now I'm on track, right? I'm defining my goals. I am understanding what I'm doing. I've got clear, concise goals that are getting me on my journey. I am understanding what I'm trying to save, how I'm saving, and where that money is going. And it's one thing to set it up. Like Craig and I, we'll say that you'll hear it over and over from us. We hate the word. I don't want to say hate. Hate's a terrible word. I don't like to use hate. We just dislike the term budget. It's one of those things for us that when you look up anything, Google it, Google financial wellness, Google financial planning, Google, saving or anything like that. And one of the things is going to tell you, do a budget. That is such a turn off for most people, because they feel like budget is this constraining, restrictive thing that happens. And so for Craig and I, it's always about a spending plan. I'm trying to create a spending plan. I'm trying to figure out my cash flow, because I can't really do saving until I know what I'm spending.
That is correct.
And the only way you can figure out what you're spending is you got to track it. You got to know what you're spending. And that's what most people get tripped up, because really, Craig, they don't want to look in the mirror and see, oh boy, this is what I've been spending on, lunch or lattes or, craft beer, God bless us.
Well, the fun part is whenever I start doing a spending plan for somebody, I get all the obvious things. I get, this is how much my rent or mortgage is. This is how much my car payment is. All the big electric bill, all that stuff. What I don't get, like, is what you just said, how much I spend on lattes, how much I spend at the movies, how much I spend on eating out. They don't talk about any of the discretionary spending that they say, because that's discretionary. I don't need to track that, right?
Yes. And that's what happens. And unfortunately, that's where the fall down occurs. And so staying on track, understanding, again, it's not really a budget. It's just understanding where you're spending your money. I mean, Craig and I are never going to tell anybody how to spend their money, but we want you to be aware of where you spend it. And then more importantly, why. Like we talked about, this ties back into the values thing, why you're spending it and what's that doing for you. And so that's really, because, the last one here in terms of this stuff is debt. And debt, money is, absolutely, like Craig talked about, that taboo, but it's also like the number one stress out there. This is the thing that is causing more and more stress, and debt is that number one part and the number one reason. And a lot of us get sort of overwhelmed with this idea of well, I had it, or something happened. Like it goes back to the emergency reserve. This is why we started there. The car broke down, or the car got totaled. Now I had to do something. I had to, I got to pay the deductible, then I had to put a down payment down, and now, I didn't have the money in the bank to do that, so I had to put it on a credit card. And now I've got this debt that I just can't get out of.
Yeah,
And so,
picture
go
here.
ahead.
I love your picture here, by the way, with it coming down on it.
Yes.
All I can think about is like WWE wrestlers, and they're like named, the Undertaker and all. What they call crippling debt. That would be
Yes.
like it's going to win every match, right?
Yes. But that's the part of this, like, is really trying to understand, okay, if I have debt, I have to start, and this goes back to part of the process. That's why each of these sort of connect to each other. I've got to figure out, how am I going to reduce this debt so that I can do the things I want to do, so I can save for the stuff I want to save. I got to get out of this first. And what happens for most of us is this sort of, like Craig likes to call it, the hamster wheel of debt. Like we get out of one debt, or we pay something off, and then we immediately step into the next thing, right? It's like, ooh, the card's free, now I can use it again. And it's all of a sudden we're in this ongoing, and I understand consumerism, the world is sort of getting us to want to do that, but you have to be in control of it. If you're letting debt control you, that's where the problem comes in.
Yeah, and the other thing too is a lot of people feel like they're the only ones struggling with it.
Yes, absolutely.
The majority of Americans are struggling with some kind of debt.
Right.
We're all trying to get that under control. And because, the retailers out there make it too easy to get yourself in trouble with debt now.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things for us that we do here at ARIES is, it's a complimentary consultation, right? So at any time, you can, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, that QR code there, that'll open up our calendar, set up a time. We're happy to have a conversation with you. In some cases, it may just be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Am I in the right path? Am I not in the right path? Can you give me a little help in terms of where I'm trying to get to? And what we try to do is help everybody, like you said, align themselves and have a little bit better relationship about what they're trying to do. All right, now we're going to get into the personalities. This is a fun part for us. We always like talking about this. Like I said, there are 7 identified money personalities out there, but much like Craig's wine, there may be a blend for each of us. Like, we may have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but usually there's one personality that's more prevalent, or that's the driver. You might have little pieces of it inside you, but there's usually one that's going to be the driver. And that's, in the case of like Craig's wine, there's that one variety of grape that's going to be, the one that stands out, and that's going to be the one that's going to be driving most of the taste in his wine. In the case for us, it's what the personality is, right? So the first one is a pack rat. Pack rat is just what it sounds like. This is somebody who saves constantly, right? Saving is everything. I'm putting money away, I'm putting money away. And, for us, that, is a great person to be talking to, somebody to be working with, because they're saving. However, there comes to a certain point in that where the drawback is they tend to oversave. They tend not to spend at all, right? They're afraid to spend the money.
Yeah, these are people, part of the reason to have money in the first place is because it allows us to do the things in our life that we want to do, right? It gives us that freedom. If you're just packing it all away like a pack rat does, then you're never allowing the money to do for you with the purpose of saving it in the first place.
Right.
Just to make your life easier and more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So
and so the balancing steps there, and some of the ways to sort of help a pack rat sort of have that mentality of it's okay to spend, is to really, we always talk about this when we talk about savings. Our visual is buckets, just for everybody out there. We talk in buckets. You may like pet, bags or pools or whatever, but for us, it's buckets. In the case of a pack rat, it would be having that bucket that is, I can spend this. Some people, when they invest, they call it mad money, right? This is my money. Like, I don't care what happens, I'm going to blow it. A pack rat needs that. A pack rat needs okay, it's okay. I put this money over here. I can spend that, right? Everything else I'm saving, I'm doing all the stuff I need to do, but I have this one pocket over here that's I can spend this money freely and I don't have to worry about it. So that's sort of a mental thing for pack rats, is to give them, yeah, that account right there, you can spend it freely. Don't worry, because you have enough backed up.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is to try to understand what it is that makes you a pack rat in the first place. Did you go through a financial difficulty? Did you have parents who were struggling with money all the time?
Correct, right.
You know, what's the piece in there, the subconscious piece that makes you say, I can't spend any money? Or maybe you're not even, feel like you can spend it on yourself. You feel like it's not worth spending money on yourself. So there's all the psychology that comes around with all of these types of money personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other one, the next one is a hippie, right? So, we call them a money hippie, and really it's more of a money, like, I think that term would be a money avoider. Right, this is somebody who's I don't think about money, I don't deal with money, right? I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to look at it, I don't want to touch it. The bills, no, I don't want to do that. It's in a spousal relationship. Usually there's one spouse who handles all the bills and one spouse who has nothing to do with them. A lot of times that personality is a money hippie. It's more to the fact that they just want to push everything off because they don't want to confront or be confronted about money or about spending or anything that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. They want that freedom. Right?
Yes, and the drawback there is that this person becomes very dependent as far as money is concerned, because they have historically and for a long time just pushed it off. So it becomes this, like, I don't want to deal with it, I don't want to think about it. Well, at some point you end up having to. And if you're in a dependent situation where you're always looking to somebody else for guidance on what to spend, how to spend, or where the money is or where it's going, you can get into a very, a bad situation with that.
Well, the other thing too, Tom, is money hippies get away with it for a long time. And the reason is because money hippies don't necessarily not work. They work, they have income coming in, it's coming in, it's going out. They're not planning. Just like,
Right. It's not a hippie, just so we're clear. It's just a money hippie, right? So like Greg said, you could be somebody who's making a couple $100,000 a year. It's just going in and you're not really looking at it or thinking about it.
Right. But at some point the gravy train stops, right? You stop working. And then what? Right. Yes. And that's where the drawback hits, because then it's all of a sudden now the expenses pile up. The income is now fixed, maybe living on Social Security or whatever little bit they did manage to put away for retirement. And that's where you say they become dependent, right? Because I don't have the money for care. I don't have the money for emergencies. I don't have the money for retirement. And so that's where they hit that wall eventually.
And this comes up a lot when we deal with the younger generation to an older generation, that sometimes the parents were, I don't want to say they were money hippies, and it may have been that it was one spouse versus the other, and the spouse who handled everything died. And then the other spouse was left with no idea of what anything was. And now it's like the child is like, well, okay, I'm trying to help my mom or my dad, but they have no idea. They don't know where anything is. They don't have anything. And now I've got to try to support them or help them because they had no idea in terms of what was going on. So you see that happen. So, some of the ways to balance that out is just to take some steps. Like Craig mentioned, one of the things is talking about this stuff, having a conversation. If you're not comfortable with money, certainly bring that up, whether it's to a spouse, whether it's to a friend, whether it's to your kids, and tell them, I can use a little help here. Nobody ever wants to ask for help, but this is a big thing with it to try to do that.
Absolutely.
The next one is the spendthrift, right? So this is somebody who just, money comes in, money goes out. And like Craig said, this is sort of along the lines of, hey, everything is great while the gravy train is moving. But there comes a point where the gravy train is going to stop. But for a spendthrift, the idea is that they enjoy the lavishness. They enjoy the hey, I'm the guy who's, footing the bill, I'm paying for the meals or whatever the case may be, because this is how I enjoy my life. This is what I'm trying to do, right? So they are always trying to treat or host or do whatever in terms of the event.
Boosts their ego. Right.
Exactly. The drawback is that even as debt starts to come on, they will continue to spend. There's no there's no, what is that, a break, right? There's no there's nothing to say pause, right? There's no pause button in it. They will just keep spending, and that can really pile up and really cause a lot of problems if it's not put in check. So the idea is to find that balance. This goes back to the whole cash flow and a spending plan. Okay, it's very hard to tell a spendthrift to delay gratification, to hold off. This is something that just doesn't work in their world. So it's very difficult to try to have that conversation with them to say, look, you need to pull in the reins. Let's not spend as much today that we did, last week or last month. And, so it's something that needs to be done on a gradual basis with a spendthrift to get them to understand there are limits to everything.
Spendthrifts have an additional danger. It's the fact that sometimes if money, say, dries up, it's bad enough when we have a lifestyle and we're used to it, and all of a sudden we got to pull back for some reason, whether we've lost a job or whatever. But a spendthrift in those situations continues to spend.
Right.
So they start acquiring debt. So it's trying to keep that lifestyle. It's trying to keep that habit going, trying to feed that ego even through the hard time. So
Correct.
Very big danger there as far as dealing with spendthrift personality.
Yeah, they won't ever curtail. That's the problem. So you do have to address that. This is a hustler. There's nothing wrong with a hustler. We don't mean a hustler, the guy's doing the 3-card Monte game. No, we mean somebody who's always trying to, do the more. I need more. I want more money. I'm going to work more hours. I'm going to take on extra jobs. I'm going to keep, the whole idea is that money equals happiness. The more money I have, the happier I'm going to be. That's really the sort of the byline of a hustler. And, let's face it, these people tend to get caught up. This is truly where a workaholic comes in, right? That's the definition of a workaholic. This is somebody whose my whole mantra is, I've got to make more because that's what's going to make me happy. That's what's going to allow me, my family, or whoever to have a better lifestyle, better stuff. So I got to keep working.
And I'm dating myself. Is it Paul Newman? Wasn't he in the movie The Hustler?
The Hustler, yes.
Yeah, the pool shark. Right.
Correct.
Always had to make a little more. Always had to have a little more.
And actually, the sequel was called The Color of Money.
Ah, okay.
With Paul Newman and what's his name there?
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So how do you balance this, right? Everything in moderation, but it might be like Craig said, some of those values. Those core values, like if family life is a core value, then the time needs to be spent there. Needs to, is take the step back and say, well, wait, I'm going to spend some time or create some boundary that says, this is family time. Work is off the table now. It's defining your time and your goals along with that. So everything aligns. Again, this goes back to aligning your values. Because if you don't, that's where you get caught into this. And then it's like everything I did, I missed all of this stuff in my world because I was so focused on the business.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds cliche, but no one's ever had a tombstone that said I should have spent more time at work.
Right.
That's what I'm going to put on.
I wish I had punched the clock even more. All right, so the gambler, and when we say gambler, we don't mean somebody who gambles, though that does come into occasion with this. The gambler is it should be really a risk taker. Somebody who's willing to, look for those returns, right? So cryptocurrency, the Bitcoin world, all of that, the risk taker, that was, ding, ding, ding. Those were the people who were lining up for that, all of that stuff. Because it was, oh yeah, no, let it ride, basically. I'm going to keep going in terms of letting everything go, and no real thought about the downside, what could happen.
Well, right. I mean, if I could just become a millionaire overnight, then why do I got to worry about all this other stuff?
Exactly. And so, the problem with the gambler is the gambler, that high risk can start creeping into some of the areas where savings might be, i.e. retirement funds, education accounts, where maybe we're looking to put a down payment on a home at some point, and I'm willing to take the risk because I want to get higher returns without realizing that, hey, that money could either drop significantly or in some cases, like cryptocurrency, disappear entirely.
Well, gambling is like, when you're winning, it's great. When you're
Yes.
losing, it's not so great. And a lot of times the problem becomes when you're in a hole, you think, well, I'm just one more bet away.
Right. Right. I just keep doubling up for whatever that is, that strategy. So the balancing steps there are this is really trying to put a line in place or a separator for the gambler to say, look, the money that's in the retirement account or in the, a kid's education or saving for a down payment or whatever it might be, that's over here. That's going to be in a more conservative, more a fiduciary type of standpoint, and the money that's over here, go crazy. That's the mad money thing. You can do what go ahead, buy Bitcoin with it, do what you want with it, that type of thing, where you'll give the gambler the ability to continue to do what he's doing with it, but you separate those other accounts so that you don't have that, everything is gone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue with people wanting to do speculative investing. It's just you don't do speculative investing with the accounts that have to be there, because if they're gone, they're gone, right? How are you going to replace them? So
yes. So the next one, the visual here we give is a roller coaster. It's not really a roller coaster as far as it's more of the high-low nature of the personality, right? I'm up, I'm down, I'm up, I'm down, I'm up, I'm down. So that's why the visual is a roller coaster in terms of this.
bipolar investor.
Well, sort of the nature of the hey, I'm all in, I'm all out. I'm all in, I'm all out. It's sort of that nature of not really being on one side of the fence or the other, just sort of jumping back and forth.
Mhm.
And the tendency there is that they tend to, the what is that, buyer's remorse, right? Is that what that's called, right? So I bought something, now I'm like, why did I buy this? That was a stupid purchase type of thing.
Well, yeah, that's true too. But I also think it's a high anxiety personality, right? Because you're afraid you're going to miss something, right? That's why you're taking the ride. Oh, it's going up, I better jump on. Oh, everybody's getting off, I better get off. And you're chasing it all the time, chasing it. So it's not just going along for the ride. I mean, going along for the ride is fine. You have ups and downs in the marketplace. The issue is you don't react to those ups and downs. These people are reacting, right? They're jumping off the roller coaster. That's why they're getting hurt.
Yes, yes. As Craig is alluding to, the only person who ever got hurt riding a roller coaster is the person who tried to jump off mid-ride. Right, but so that's the idea here with a roll, so it is this high-low, this nature of I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out, and it does really create this anxiety with the whole what's going on. So it's always about, again, trying to set, and that's why we started with the ones that we did in the beginning, that spending plan and making sure I'm on track and understanding I can't maybe buy something today. I've got to delay that. That's the delayed gratification thing. And, maybe I'll come back to it in a couple of days and see if I still want to buy it instead of just going all in right now and buying it when I really may not need it.
Right. Trying to be less reactionary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the worrywart, right? So this is the person who it's always doom and gloom. There's never an upside. It's always bad. Everything that's crazy is going to happen. Like the whole thing going on today with the banking industry. So this person has probably already started digging the holes in their backyard so they can bury their money in the coffee cans because that's what they're at. That's the mindset, which is that, the sky is falling. Everything is bad. It's always going to be bad. I'm never going to be able to ever do anything that I want to do. I'll never save enough. I'll never have enough money. That's the worrywart.
Yep.
And the drawback with this is it's very, very difficult to try to achieve financial well-being or financial wellness with this mindset. I mean, this constant worry, this is the biggest stress driver of them all because it's a constant like negative attitude, it's a negative outlook, and there's nothing that's positive in this. And so that worry wart really is a problem for if it's a driver in your personality that needs to be addressed, right? And I think Craig and I, we talk to people all the time about look, okay, you've done some things, but it's like, don't like beat yourself up on this because of where you are, and you can take steps to go forward from here.
Yeah, I have several clients like this that, no matter how much they make, no matter how much they save, no how much you tell them that they're never going to have to worry about running out of money because they don't, they still worry, right?
Correct.
And if they don't worry about the money, they worry about, something happening with the economy or somebody else, something else happening that's going to disrupt their apple cart.
Yeah.
Sometimes these people get so used to worrying that they don't know how to not worry.
Right, exactly. And that's what it comes down to, is that's the whole thing with it is. And so a lot of this with the worry wart is it going back to that whole tracking expense thing. Like, so if we're tracking and we're staying on track, there's a way to show the worry wart that, look, it's not all bad. You're on pace, you're on track, you've got a handle on where things are going. And it's a way to sort of combat that personality to take a little bit of the sting out of everything. So any of this feel like you, this is where the financial wellness thing comes in when we talk about this. I'm so stressed, over the debt that I have. I don't have a money management system. I don't know how to pay down my debt or even deal with it. I don't know how to really, the word there is budget, but put together a cash flow spending plan so I don't feel deprived. All of this, I've got limiting beliefs. I'm not really feeling supported or understanding with my money or my debt management. And I really don't know how to make all this work. I mean, this really sort of culminates all of the things that happen, the stress, Greg, that people feel when they're dealing with money and money issues.
Yeah, and like I said, absolutely. I mean, everybody took home ec, right? So you know how to balance a checkbook, so everything should be easy, right? I mean, I have an accounting degree, and there wasn't a single course on personal finance,
right?
On how to manage your own finances. So nobody should feel bad that they don't know how to do these things or feel stressed because of these whatever financial, personality you happen to be. So that's why we're here, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of that, that's the whole idea here, like we said. So the idea for ARIES and the foundation and Craig and I and our team and what we do is really trying to help everybody sort of get a handle on this stuff, figuring out, not so much what personality you are, but maybe some of the drivers, right? Maybe what variety of grape in your wine is driving you that's causing some of this either stress or discourse or problem with your money and your money management. You shoot that QR code, it's going to open up our calendar, schedule a time. We're happy to have a conversation with you. I will say we keep, the Think with a Drink going. This is what's on tap. Mm-hmm. So because it's Financial Literacy Month, next month we're going back to basics. We're doing spending versus saving, saving versus spending, because it's Financial Literacy Month. On the 13th, 5 questions for investing in a down market, because let's face it, we're still in a down market and, it's waffles and wobbles and goes in different ways. 420, just because it's 420, so we're having fun with it. It's, we're not going to do Cheech and Chong, though I think if we did Cheech and Chong, you'd probably be Cheech, I'd probably be Chong. We're going to do cannabis and investing in the cannabis industry for beginners.
As a consumer?
As an investor, not as a consumer, not as Cheech and Chong there up in smoke you with that.
Investments, right?
Yeah. So anybody, if you ever have questions, you can always go to the website. Again, ariesfoundation.org. You can reach us at info@ariesfoundation.org. But the easiest thing to do is shoot that QR code. It's going to open up the calendar. book a time with us. We're happy to have a conversation, see how we can help you be better with your money. And on that note, I am going to say thanks, Greg, and have a great evening.
You too.